Alright. I think this thing's working here. You should be able to hear me through the microphone that's attached to the fan. Don't worry about the positioning. It's there for a reason. But, what up, though? As they say here in the D. My name is Mike Zubis, but online, and as you'll see me through this YouTube video, it will be Big Baby Zubis. The one and only. And today, on this most honorable of days for our great country, I've decided to do something I promised to do a long time ago. And that is to read the transcript of George Washington's farewell address, word for word, with some annotations I will add in commentary. Mostly word for word, in its entirety. Congress used to do this every year on his birthday, to celebrate his birthday, up until about the year 1994. Then they stopped doing it for one reason or another. I'm sure because of, George Washington's checkered history with slavery. And I do understand that he did do some bad things while he was president with regards to the indentured servants he had within his domicile at the time. And I do understand that people would have issues with that. But I would like to counter argue, that at the end of his days, I feel like George Washington had remorse for his actions, for being a slave owner, for lack of better terminology. And knowing that he put in his will to free all of his slaves, that's a good thing. I mean, it's not good because he had to wait till he expired to take care of that. But this is before we even had railroads. So, unfortunately, from the Roman times up until about the invention of the steam engine, we have been, whether we like it or not, and tied to slave labor. But we need to move past that, and we need to move past the inherent racism that was created from the slave trade and the slave market. But again, going back to George Washington, after he filled out his will and died, and the slaves were supposed to be freed, well, only 2/3 of them were freed, because in the state of Virginia, where George Washington retired to after being president, where he resided, they enacted a law that stated that if you married somebody and got slaves from that, and you gave those slaves away, or allowed them to be free men and women, you were only allowed to do that to 2/3 of that, and 1/3 of the slave population that you had would be reverted to the widowed family, as they said in the law. So, whether we like it or not, even George Washington got screwed by the law in this country. So we always have to be vigilant of laws, good or bad, and how they affect us. So, that being said, I would like to begin this now, since I've already spent 5 minutes on disposition just trying to talk about why we should talk about this very important speech that has been forgotten in time, and the main reasonings behind it. So, let us begin. Friends and fellow citizens, the period of a new election of a citizen to administer the executive government of the United States being not far distant, and the time actually arrived when your thoughts must be employed in designating the person who is to be clothed with that important trust, it appears to me proper, especially as it may conduce to a more distinct expression of the public voice, that I should now apprise you of the resolution I have formed, to decline being considered among the number of those whom a choice is to be made. So this is George Washington saying that I'm not going to run a third term, pretty much. I beg you, at the same time, to do me the justice to be assured that this resolution has not been taken without a strict regard to all the considerations appertaining to the relation which binds a dutiful citizen to his country, and that in withdrawing the tender of service which silence in my situation might imply, I am influenced by no diminution of zeal for your future interest, no deficiency of grateful respect for your past kindness. But I am supported by a full conviction that the step is compatible with both. This is just him giving his reasoning, in 1796 language. It can be a little bit more. There's going to be some interesting words here. There's going to be some thick old words, and that's going to be. I might mess a couple of them up, but please allow me the indulgence to say the proper terminology. Thank you. Let me scroll down a bit here. The acceptance of and continuance hitherto in the office to which your suffrages have twice called me have been a uniform sacrifice of inclination to the opinion of duty and to the deference for what appeared to be your desire. I constantly hoped that it would have been much earlier in my power, consistently with motives which I was not at liberty to disregard, to return to that retirement from which I had been reluctantly drawn. The strength of my inclination to do this, previous to the last election, had even led to the preparation of an address to declare it to you. But mature reflection on the then perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations, and the unanimous advice of persons entitled to my confidence, impelled me to abandon the idea. So this is him just basically explaining that in the first term of his office, he seriously considered not running again, and he was convinced by we find out through other documentation, that's Thomas Jefferson mostly, to be convinced to run for a second term, in which he unanimously won because George Washington. So that's the explanation of all that. I rejoice that the state of your concerns, external as well as internal, no longer renders the pursuit of inclination incompatible with the sentiment of duty or propriety, and am persuaded, whatever partiality may be retained for my services, that in the present circumstances of our country, I apologize, you will not disapprove my determination to retire. The impressions with which I first undertook the Adorus Trust were explained on the proper occasion. In the discharge of this trust, I will only say that I have, with good intentions, contributed towards the organization and administration of the government the best exertions of which a very fallible judgment was capable, not unconscious in the outset of the inferiority of my qualifications, experience in my own eyes, perhaps still more in the eyes of others, has strengthened the motives to diffidence of myself. And every day the increasing weight of years admonishes me more and more that the shade of retirement is as necessary to me as it will be welcome. Satisfied that if any circumstances were given peculiar value to my services, they were temporary, I have the consolation to believe that, while choice and prudence invite me to quit the political scene, patriotism does not forbid it. So this is just more in-depth discussion about why he wishes to retire from political office. Good stuff. Okay, let's see. Oh, I went too low. I apologize. I am looking forward to the moment which is intended to terminate the career of my public life. My feelings do not permit me to suspend the deep acknowledgement of that debt of gratitude which I owe to my beloved country for the many honors that it has conferred upon me. Still more, the steadfast confidence which it has supported me, and for the opportunities I thence enjoyed of manifesting my inviolable attachment, by services faithful and persevering, through an usefulness unequal to my zeal. If benefits have resulted to our country from these services, let it always be remembered to your praise. and an instructive example in our annals that, under circumstances in which the passions, agitated in every direction, were liable to mislead, amidst appearances sometimes dubious. Ooh, this is a good word. Vicus. Ooh, this is a good word, dude. Oh, Vicistudi. Vicissitudes of fortune, often discouraged. I want to look that word up. Oh man, I want to look that word up. Hold on. Let me look that word up on another screen here. I'll open this up and then let's see. Oh, my keyboard is over there. Okay. Let's see if I can spell this. Okay, I think that's close. A change or variation. A normally unforeseen change in circumstance or experience that affects one's life. Difficulty. Okay. So let me reread that. Agitate and agitate, liable to mislead. This is okay. So changes in. Oh man, I lost the page. So the difficulty is the synonym is difficulty of fortune, often discouraging. We'll just use the synonym that is more modern, since that word's a word, dude. Okay. So the sometimes dubious difficulty of fortune, often discouraging in situations which not unfrequently want of success has countenanced the spirit of criticism. The consistency of your support was the essential prop of the efforts and a guarantee of the plans by which they were effected. Profoundly penetrated by this idea, I shall carry it with me to my grave, as a strong incitement to our unceasing vows that heaven may continue to you the choicest tokens of its beneficence, that your union and brotherly affection may be perpetual, that the free constitution, which is the work of your hands, may be sacredly maintained, that its administration in every department may be stamped with wisdom and virtue, that, in fine, the happiness of the people of these states, under the auspices of liberty, may be made complete by so careful a preservation and so prudent a use of this blessing as will acquire them the glory of recommending it to the applause, the affection, and the adoption of every nation which is yet stranger to it. So this is George Washington explaining that the Constitution is, well, as long as it is a document created by we, the people of America, and needs to be maintained, and it will be brought upon the rest of the world as a means of finding true freedom for people around the planet. And it has. I mean, there are so many nations that consider themselves constitutional republics now. They have a constitution. They use their entire law structure is not based on like a religion like some nations have, or some sort of royal decrees created by a family that has been in power for centuries. It is a piece of paper made by a bunch of people who work together to say, this is how we want to run our nation. And it has been a very successful experiment, even in these trying times. But that is because people don't respect the Constitution as much as they used to. Let us continue. Here, perhaps, I ought to stop. But at the solicitude for your welfare, which cannot end but with my life, and the apprehension of danger natural to that solicitude, urge me, on an occasion like the present, to offer to your solemn contemplation, and to recommend to you your frequent review, some sentiments which are the result of much reflection, of no inconsiderate observation, and which appear to me all important to the permanency of your felicity as a people. These will be offered to you with more freedom, as you can only see in them the disinterested warnings of a parting friend, who can possibly have no personal motive to bias his counsel. Nor can I forget, as an encouragement to it, your indulgent reception of my sentiments on a former and not so dissimilar occasion. Interwoven as is the love of liberty with every ligament of your hearts, no recommendation of mine is necessary to fortify or confirm the attachment. That was pretty good. That was pretty self-explanatory, so I don't think I need to say anything there. The unity of government, which constitutes you one people, is now dear to you. It is justly so, for it is a main pillar of the edifice of your real independence. The support of your tranquility at home, your peace abroad, of your safety, of your prosperity, of that very liberty which you so highly prize. But it is as easy to foresee that, from different causes and from different quarters, much pains will be taken, many artifices employed, to weaken in your minds the conviction of this truth, as this is the point of your political fortress, against which the batteries of internal and external enemies will most constantly and actively, through often covertly and insidiously directed, though often covertly insidious, though, I apologize, directed. It is of infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your collective and individual happiness, that you should cherish a cordial, habitual, and immovable attachment to it, accustoming yourselves to think and speak of it as the palladium. I think that's another word we should look up. Oh, jeez. Okay, here we go. Palladium. No, it's not a chemical element. It's not, I don't... It says it's a chemical element, so I guess it's it's discovered in 1803. Okay, well, I guess that's what he means. Oh, I should have highlighted it because now I lost my spot. Oh, jeez. Oh, there it is. Palladium. Anyways, if anybody else wants to look it up, post it right there in the chat. Right there in the comments, y'all. Okay. Palladium. Oh, let's see. Speak of it as one of the palladium of your political safety and prosperity, watching for its preservation with jealous anxiety, discountenancing whatever may suggest even a suspicion that it can in any event be abandoned, and indignity frowning upon the first dawning, I don't know why I saw R there, dawning of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from the rest, or to enfeeble the sacred ties which now link together the various parts. So this is George Washington starting with his recommendations for the country and what he feels like are the issues that can tear our nation down. The first one being that there will be enemies, foreign and domestic, which means that was probably his idea to put that in there. This is going to be getting in depth. This is where we get in the real meat and potatoes of the speech when it comes to him discussing issues of different issues that he sees will come to a head in the future as a political in the political world, I guess would be the proper terminology. The first one being national unity. So he will go in more depth, so we should probably get into that. Okay. Now, there it is. Okay. For this, you have every inductment of sympathy and interest. Citizens, by birth or choice, of a common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. With slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You have in a common cause fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess are the work of joint councils and joint efforts, of common dangers, sufferings, and successes. Now, some of this stuff was pretty true back then. Yeah, everybody practiced the same religion, but I think America has evolved in a way that we can find ways to accept each other, even through our differences outside of being an American, as long as we respect each other as American citizens. That has become the idea of the American melting pot, as some people have called it. And I feel like it has been very effective. Every group of people from another nation, be it Italy, Ireland, Africa, well, now that's a continent, France, not France, because France is here from the beginning. Even China. Yeah, there's all kinds of people from all kinds of nations that have come in here, struggled, worked their butts off, and became an acceptable part of the American culture. There's Chinese food places everywhere. There's pizzas everywhere. I mean, people love Irish whiskey. I mean, I'm probably not. I can't. If I drink whiskey, I get kind of weird. But to each their own. But it proves that the American experience is, first you get your ass kicked, and then people learn to accept you. I apologize for people that don't want to hear the A word, but that's how it works. You come in, people look at you with a disregard and dissimulation, and then eventually people learn. People find out your own individual contributions to the American culture as a whole, where you bring some things from your own land, or some of your own traditions, and it becomes part of the American culture. That's the beauty of America. You could be from anywhere, as long as you understand our values, our principles, and how we work together as a nation. The culture becomes part of you. You become a part of it, and then we feed off of each other. It helps. It really helps. The Great American Melting Pot works. Whether you agree with it or not, it works. It's been proven time and time again, from the 1860s to now. But let us continue, since I went on a tangent. But these considerations, however powerfully they address themselves to your sensibility, are greatly outweighed by those which apply more immediately to your interest. Here, every portion of our country finds the most commanding motives for carefully guarding and preserving the Union as a whole. The North, with an unrestrained intercourse with the South, keep your mind out of the gutter, protected by the equal laws of a common government, find the productions of a latter great additional resources of maritime and commercial enterprise and precious materials of manufacturing industry. The South, in the same intercourse, benefiting by the agency of the North, see its agriculture growth and its commerce expand, turning partially into its own channels of the seamen, turning partly into its own channels, the seamen of the North. It finds its particular navigation invigorated, and while it contributes in different ways to nourish and increase the general mass of the national navigation, it looks forward to the protection of the maritime strength, to which itself is unequally adapted. The East, in a like intercourse with the West, already finds that in the progressive improvement of interior communications by land and water, will more and more find a valuable vent for the commodities which it brings from abroad or manufactures at home. The West derives from the East supplies requisite to its growth and comfort, and what is perhaps of still greater consequence, it must of necessity own the secure enjoyment of indispensable outlets for its own productions to the weight, influence, and the future maritime strength of the Atlantic side of the Union, directed by an indissoluble community of interest as one nation under God. Damn it, I did it. Sorry. I try not to do that because the Knights of Columbus put that in there in the 60s. And, whether you agree with it or not, I don't think it should. That should not have been added in there. I mean, I get it. We're trying to be like Christian nation and all that, but the foundation and principles try to keep us at least a little bit secular in our governance, so that way we don't become a theocracy. The whole putting under God and the Pledge of Allegiance, in my argument, violates that separation of church and state, in my personal opinion. I apologize for the tangent again. So now that I've distracted us from the East and the West derives from the East supplies requisite to its growth and comfort, and what is perhaps of still greater consequence, it must of necessity owe the secure enjoyment of indispensable outlets for its own production of the weight, influence, and the future maritime strength of the Atlantic side of the Union, directed by an indissoluble community of interest as one nation. Alright, so I already read that, didn't I? Okay, good. At least we got it down pat this time. Any other tenure by which the West can hold this essential advantage, whether derived from its own separate strength or from an apostate, an unnatural connection with any foreign power, must be instinctively precarious. So always be wary of foreign influence in our land. But that's the ending part. The overall thing, I'm sure you can get out of it, is that when all parts of America work with each other through interstate commerce, we function better together as a whole. When we are 50 states trying to conduct commerce with each other, northern states working with southern states, eastern states working with western states, etc., then everybody works together better because everybody is working with each other, trying to make a more perfect union. So let us continue. While then every part of our country thus feels an immediate and particular interest in union, all the parts combined cannot fail to find the united mass of means and efforts, greater strength, greater resource, proportionably greater security from external danger, a less frequent interruption of their peace by foreign nations, and, what is of inestimable value, they must derive from union an exemption from those broils and wars between themselves, which so frequently afflicting neighboring countries not tied together by the same governments, which their own rivalship alone would be sufficient to produce, but which opposite foreign alliances, attachments, and intrigues would stimulate and embitter. Hence, likewise, they will avoid the necessity of those overgrown military establishments which, under any form of government, are inauspicious to liberty, to which are to be regarded as particularly hostile to republican liberty. In this sense, it is that your union ought to be considered as a main prop of your liberty, and that the love of this one ought to endear you to the preservation of the other. That was more disposition into how we need to be a one nation, a bunch of states, but united as one nation, because other countries don't do the same and falter due to that disunity. The lack of unity destroys nations. That is very important, because if you can see how things are now, red states, blue states, this state, that state, everybody is against each other, north against the south, east against the west, everybody hates each other, and nobody gets along. The disunity that George Washington warned us about is a reality of today. And until we change that, America is not strong. Oh, and don't forget, military establishments. There's the magic word. Almost like we have an industrial complex of military people, and they run the country through secret means or something. It's almost like they're an establishment. What do you know? Anyways, these considerations speak a persuasive language to every reflecting and virtuous mind. They exhibit the continuance of the union as the primary object of patriotic desire. Is there a doubt whether a common government can embrace so large a sphere? Let experience solve it. To listen to a mere speculation in such a case were criminal. We are authorized to hope that a proper organization of the whole, with the auxiliary agency of governments for the respective subdivisions, will afford a happy issue to the experiment. It is well worth a fair and full experiment. With such powerful and obvious motives to union, affecting all parts of our country, while experience shall not have demonstrated its impracticability, wow, nice word there, there will always be a reason to distrust the patriotism of those who in any quarter may endeavor to weaken its bands. So don't trust anybody who says the nation needs to not be united and we need to divide ourselves. Anybody who believes that dividing and conquering America is a good thing is not a patriot. Not a patriot. Well, let's continue. Once again, in contemplating the causes which may disturb our union, it occurs as matter of serious concern that any ground should have been furnished for characterizing parties by geographical discriminations. Northern and Southern, Atlantic and Western, whence designing men may endeavor and excite a belief that there is a real difference of local interests and views. One of the expedients of party to acquire influence within particular districts is to misrepresent the opinions and aims of other districts. You cannot shield yourselves too much against the jealousies and heartburnings which spring from these misrepresentations. They tend to render alien to each other those ought to be bound together by fraternal affection. The inhabitants of our western country have lately had a useful lesson on this head. I thought it said he. They have seen in the negotiation by the executive and in the unanimous ratification by the Senate the treaty with Spain, and in the universal satisfaction of that event throughout the United States, a decisive proof how unfounded were the suspicions propagated among them of a policy in the general government in the Atlantic States unfriendly to their interest in regard to the Mississippi. They have been witnesses to the formation of two treaties, that with Great Britain and that with Spain, which secured to them everything they could desire. In respect to our foreign relations towards confirming their prosperity, will it not be their wisdom to rely for the preservation of these advantages on the union by which they were procured? Will they not henceforth be deaf to those advisers, if such there are, who would sever them from their brethren and connect them with aliens? So this is interesting. This is when he starts going into political parties and foreign interests, using divisiveness to separate us and our unity and create the divide and conquer strategy I previously mentioned. He wishes to warn people about this through these words, I'm sure. I believe there is more, but let us continue to find out, of course. To the efficacy and permanency of your union, a government for the whole is indispensable. No alliance, however strict, between the parts can be adequate substitute, and must inevitably experience the infractions and interruptions which all alliances in times have experienced. Sensible of this momentous truth, you have improved upon your first essay by the adoption of a constitution of government better calculated than your former for an intimate union and for the efficacious management of your common concerns. This government, the offspring of our own choice, uninfluenced and unawed, adopted upon full investigation and mature deliberation, completely free in its principles, in the distribution of its powers, uniting security with energy, and containing within itself a provision for its own amendment, just that it has just a claim to your confidence and your support. Respected for its authority, compliance with its laws, acquiescence in its measures, are duties enjoyed by the fundamental maxims of our true liberty. The basis of our political systems is the right of the people to make and to alter the constitutions of government. But the constitution, which at any time exists, till changed by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people, is sacredly obligatory upon all. The very idea of the power and the right of the people to establish government presupposes the duty of every individual to obey the established government. Quick water break there. So, this one goes in more in depth about how the government was created by us based on choice, of course, and how we need to adhere to it in order to have it work most effectively. So, I guess that's why it is best to understand that the Constitution really is the true law of the land. No person can be above it unless we create a law that does that, which we kind of have over the years. And if we repeal, it would take a lot of effort to repeal those laws. But that being said, the point of our government is to be more united than anything when it comes to passing the laws that need to be passed. But of course, history proved that things changed, mostly due to political parties. Something that George Washington was against wholeheartedly. All obstructions to the executions of the laws, all combinations and associations under whatever plausible character, with the real design to direct, control, counteract, or awe the regular deliberation and actions of the constituted authorities, are destructive of this fundamental principle and of fatal tendency. They serve the nation, the will of a part. They serve to organize fraction, to give an artificial and extraordinary force, to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party. Often a small but artful and enterprising minority of the community, in accordance to the alternate triumphs of different parties, to make the public administration the mirror of the ill-concerted and incongruous. I gotta look this word up. Well, okay, we got another word to look up, y'all. Let's see. Is there, lacking in harmony. Okay. So, public ill-concerted and incompatible projects of faction, rather than the organ of consistent and wholesome plans digested by common councils and modified by mutual interest. All right, so this is President Washington going into more in depth into why political parties in the, whether you agree with one side or the other, they have one goal, and that is to get the will of the few to outweigh the will of the many, based on their based on a skillful and enterprising minority. So a small group of people want to influence the rest of America through political party, which is literally what happens right now. A small group of people run both political parties, and when the one's in power and the other's in power, the minority wins and the majority of the American people are looked away. Thus proving that the problem isn't the Democratic or the Republican parties, the problem is party itself. Because no matter what party it is, they have one goal, and that is to let a small opinion become the majority opinion, instead of it being a majority opinion becoming a small person's opinion, or whatever. Not small person, but smaller group. The special interests. He is literally describing how the special interests have taken over. The mutual interest. Just replace mutual interest at the end of here with special interest, and you get exactly. This wasn't a prediction. This was a spoiler, as Paul Heyman would say. He spoiled what the political parties were going to do. He predicted and spoiled it, I guess, but more spoiled what was going to happen. And it did. Political parties have a will over the country. They want to impose their party's will on the country, not what their constituents that they got elected for want, which is the problem, which is why everybody's so divided, because we're divided by party. So we don't look at the other side. We don't listen to the majority of people. We listen to a minority of people and then try to get the political power to pretend it's a majority movement, when all we're doing is just listening to the special interest at the end of the day. Let us continue. We're almost to the halfway point of this speech. Can you believe it? However, combinations or associations of the above description may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely, in the course of time and things, to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which had lifted them to unjust dominion. Enough said. If you can't get that political parties themselves are the problem, I don't know what else to tell you. Let us continue. Towards the preservation of your government and the permanency of your present happy state, it is requisite not only that you steadily discontinuance irregular oppositions to its acknowledged authority, but also that you resist with care the spirit of innovation upon its principles, however specious the pretext. Yeah, a lot of S's there. One method of assault may be to effect in the forms of the Constitution alterations which will impair the energy of the system, and thus to undermine which cannot be directly overthrown. In all the changes to which you may be invited, remember that time and habit are at least as necessary to fix the true character of governments as of other human institutions. That experience is the surest standard by which to test the real hypothesis and opinion, exposes to perpetual change from the endless variety of hypothesis and opinion. And remember, especially, that for the efficient management of your common interests in a country so extensive as ours, a government of as much vigor as is consistent with the perfect security of liberty is indispensable. Liberty itself will find in such a government, which powers properly distributed and adjusted, its surest guardian. It is, indeed, little else than a name, where the government is too feeble to withstand the enterprises of faction, to confine in each other each member of the society within the limits prescribed by the laws, and to maintain all in the secure and tranquil enjoyment of the rights of person and property. This goes into more of the problems with how political parties can destroy the country from within by enacting laws that seek to weaken its strengths instead of strengthen its weaknesses. I'm not going to go into specific laws and whatnot. You know, we could go into this, that, and the other thing about all kinds of amendments that have been passed and why, like prohibition, we had to repeal prohibition because guess what? You can't stop people from drinking. You can only try to help them if they drink too much, If they have a problem, that's what you need to do, That's why, the whole war on drugs thing. We did it before and it was called prohibition. Didn't work then, doesn't work now. What do you know? So sometimes we need to seriously consider laws that are being passed, which is why political parties don't want you to read the laws they're trying to pass, because they don't want you to know what's in it until afterwards. Hence, people like Nancy Pelosi saying things that we need to pass the law in order to read it, so that way when you read it, you realize that it shouldn't have been passed. That's the point. That's the reasoning behind it. Nancy Pelosi is proof that the political party, not the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party, the party itself is the problem. Because its entire goal is to siphon the power away from the American people and give it to themselves. And then you wonder why she has $100 million or $10 million or whatever $1 million she has. She's a millionaire and she wasn't before she got into Congress. There's a problem. Political parties. Let us continue. I have already intimated. What is intimated? I gotta look up intimated because I don't know what that word means. Intimated. Okay. To indicate or make known indirectly. She intimated that they were married. Okay. Not to be confused with insinuate, which I almost did actually. Yeah. Okay. So I have already made known indirectly to you the dangers of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its roots in the strongest passions of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed. But in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness, and it is truly their worst enemy. Yes, that is the truth. America's worst enemy is itself. Sounds like a good song. I wonder if a band made it. It must have been pretty lit. Anyways, The alternate domination of one faction or another. Oh, this is the good part here. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries have perpetuated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. So yeah, the two-party system is the problem. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, or more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. He's really hitting the nail on the head here. The hammer is doing his work. Political parties are a real problem, and he knew what was going to happen with political parties way before it happened. He foresaw all of what is going on today between the Democrats and the Republicans, all this divisiveness, all this hatred, all this need to get revenge on the other party for what they did, from 2016 to now, the more recent times, especially the more recent times. George Washington warned us about this. Warned us, absolutely positively, and we chose to ignore it. And now, we reap what we have sown, have we not? Let us continue. Once again. Without forward looking into an extremity of this kind, which nevertheless ought to not be entirely out of sight, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're never going to exist. Political parties will always exist. But we need to understand that political party is not the solution to our problems. The will of the people is. Everybody finding a way to agree and in a united fashion affect the laws of our country to help all people, not just some. That is what is needed, because that is not what is happening right now. Okay. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption, which finds the facilitated access to the government itself through the channels of party passions. Thus, the policy and the will of one country are subjected to the policy and will of another. Another thing he predicted: the foreign influence of us through the political parties. I mean, just look at how divided we are in the Middle East scenarios. One party has complete and absolute dedication to certain nations over another, specifically one with a blue and white flag. But I digress. The issues of this prove, once again, that everything in this document is a prediction of what is to come, what has happened, what will continue until we start to understand that George Washington was trying to warn us of things. This is a 45-minute, well, definitely longer than that now due to my explanations, but This is a giant warning to the American people. And we heeded that warning year after year, decade after decade, for a few centuries, up until more recently. Because people in power wanted us to forget this speech, this address. So that way we would be doomed to repeat the history that we did not learn. Now let me find my thing. Let me shut the thing. Okay. There is an opinion that parties in free countries are useful checks upon the administration of the government and serve to keep alive the spirit of liberty. This, within certain limits, is probably true, and in governments of a monarchical cast, I'm presuming that means a constitutional monarchy, patriotism may look with indulgence and not in favor upon the spirit of party. But in those of the popular character, in governments purely elective, such as ours, it is a spirit not to be encouraged. From their natural tendency, it is certain there will always be enough of that spirit for every salutary purpose. And for there being constant danger of excess, the effort ought to be by force of public opinion, to mitigate and assuage it. Assuage. Let's we got another word. It's word time. Let's type in this word and see what's going on. Assuage. Oh, no, that's Julian Assange. We already know he should be a free man. Assange, I should put a definition. Oh, okay. Okay, now I found the definition. I should have typed in definition after typing that in. Okay, to mitigate and to lessen the intensity or to ease it. Okay. So there ought to be constant danger of excess. The effort ought to be by force of public opinion to mitigate and pacify it. That's another good one. A fire not to be quenched. Oh, that's the other one to use, quenched. Yeah, okay, that's cool. It demands a uniform vigilance to prevent its bursting into a flame, lest instead of a warning, it should consume. Wow, that's interesting, because that's government is like a force. It is a force. It is not like anything else, but it is a fire. It is a fire that people use to warm themselves or their lives, to stay. Everybody camps around the fire, and it's a united fire. But sometimes if you don't watch the fire, if you let the fire do what it wants to do, sometimes the fire gets too big, too wild, and it becomes a forest fire. It consumes all in its wake, creating nothing but destruction, of course. Just as a government would if it became tyrannical. A tyrannical government does not heal. It consumes. It destroys. And we need to be wary of that because we are very close to that if we are not already there. Due to the powerful bipartisan establishment. What a scary word that is to me. Whenever I hear bipartisan, I fear what they have put in that bill. I'm not going to lie to you at all. I fear what they put in bipartisan legislation. Most of the time. Let us continue. Once again. It is important, likewise, that the habits of thinking in a free country should inspire caution in those entrusted with its administration. to confine themselves within their respective constitutional spheres, avoiding in the exercise of the powers of one department to encroach upon another. Kind of like what people do with the IRS. Should have waited till the end. Sorry about that. The spirit of encroachment tends to consolidate the powers of all departments in one, and thus to create, whatever the form of government, a real despotism. A just estimate of that love of power and proneness to abuse it, which predominates in the human heart, is sufficient to satisfy us to the truth of this position. The necessity of reciprocal checks in the exercise of political power by dividing and distributing it into different depositories and constituting each of the guardian of the public weal against invasions by the others has been advised by experiments ancient and modern, some of them in our country and under our own eyes. To preserve them must be as necessary as to institute them. If, in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be in any particular wrong, let it be corrected by an amendment in the way which the Constitution designates. But let there be no change in usurpation, for though this, in one instance, may be an instrument of good, it is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. The precedent must be always greatly overbalanced in permanent evil any partial or transient benefit which the use can at any time yield. Well, that's pretty interesting. This is more in depth into how corruption and influence of taking away the checks and balances that our government system uses can create despotism and another tyrannical government. That is absolutely true. I believe that checks and balances is a foundational principle of our country and needs to be maintained as such. Without checks and balances, without the three separate branches of government, things would work in a very bad way. You'd be like, oh yeah, it'll work. Yeah, but nothing good will come of it. Because there won't be anybody to check or balance other people's bad laws. There won't be. It'll just be, you might as well just give somebody a crown. Call them king or queen or whoever they want to be. Because they certainly are not a representative of the people. That is the point. Let me get a quick bit of water here. Wow, we're really getting down this thing. Okay. One of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with the private and public felicity. Let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths of which the instruments of investigation in courts of justice? Desert the... I didn't read that question right. If the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths which the instruments of investigation in courts of justice? You know what? I don't think... It's alright. And let us be with caution. Indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. I mean, I get that. I mean, I used to be an atheist. I really did.
I used to think there was no God, and there was no Satan, there wasn't nothing. There's just like, I'm gonna die and I'm gonna be dead. And that's it. And that really didn't help. And I feel like finding religion really put some structure in my life. It really did. Whatever religion you may practice, whatever God you may pray to, there is a God. There certainly is a Satan too. Whether he's Satan or another name, there is good, there is evil, and I feel like atheism isn't the belief that there is an absence of those things. It's just the denial that there is. And I get that. Everybody has their beliefs. That was the point of freedom of speech. But I do understand George Washington's argument that, some people who are not religious sometimes have a tougher time. I did. Maybe some people do. Kyle Kulinski is a great example of an atheist who's lived a successful and well-structured life. He represents himself well, and doesn't believe in God or Satan or whatever. That's up to him. We all have the right to believe. That's the beauty of this country. We're not a theocracy where you're forced to believe in a Christian God, or like in Pakistan where you're forced to believe in a Muslim God, and if you believe in a Christian God, you're sentenced to be stoned to death for blasphemy. We're different. We give people the right to believe that there is or isn't. I do believe that his argument that it does help is a good argument. I'm sure we could agree to disagree on that, but again, that is his argument, and I'm sure we could discuss it in the comments right down below. Comment down below if you want to talk about that at this part, wherever the heck we're at. Okay, so let us continue on. It is substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government. The rule, indeed, extends with more or less force to every species of free government. Who that is a sincere friend to it can look with indifference upon attempts to shake the foundations of the fabric? Promote then, as an object to primary importance, institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge, in proportion as the structure of government gives force to public opinion. It is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. As a very important source of strength and security, cherish public credit. One method of preserving it is to use it as sparingly as possible, avoiding occasions of expense by cultivating peace, but remembering also that timely disbursements to prepare for danger frequently prevent much greater disbursements to repeal it. Avoiding likewise the accumulation of debt, not only by shunning occasions of expense, but by vigorous exertion in time and peace to discourage the debts which unavoidable wars may have occasioned, not ungenerously throwing upon this prosperity the burden which we allow ourselves to bear. The execution of these maxims belongs to your representatives, but it is necessary that public opinion should cooperate to facilitate to them the performance of their duty. It is essential that you should practically bear in mind that toward the payment of debts there must be revenue, and to that revenue there must be taxes, that no taxes can be devised which not more than or less inconvenient and unpleasant than the intrinsic embarrassment inseparable from the selection of the proper objects, which is always a choice of difficulties, ought to be a decisive motive for a candid construction of the conduct of the government in making it, and for the spirit of acquiescence in the measures of obtaining revenue, which the public that's a good one. Exegeses? Exegeses? Yeah, exegeses. Okay, here we go. Exegeses definition. That's on my Merriam-Webster's website. Let me just try to X. Okay. The quality state of being XG, that doesn't help. Okay, the public demanding may at times. Okay, so the demand of the public. Okay. The public demand may at times dictate. Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. Oh wait, I should probably go into that part. So this is just talking about how we should always be wary about spending too much money, because that money's got to come from somewhere. You know, even though we're fiat currency, we just print it out. Every time we print out that money, we lose value of that money. So we have to be wary about how much money is being used, how much money is being taxed, how much money is being spent, and how much money we're taking in. Because if we aren't wary of our budget and how much we tax, then we're overtaxing the people, which in turn hurts the prosperity and the wealth of the people in general. People aren't as wealthy as they were back in the day, especially at the lower tax rates, because unless you're dirt poor, then you have to pay a lot of money for taxes. You have to pay a lot, mostly because of the tax structure being imbalanced for the select few special interests that control the political parties that have influenced their tax rates to go down and our tax rates to go up, which George Washington obviously warned us about. We spend too much, we take in too little, and that is why the value of the American dollar is taking a crap. So let us continue. Oh, wow, we're really starting to get down there. Okay. Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct. And can it be that good policy does not equally enjoin it? It will be worthy of a free, enlightened, and at no distant period, a great nation, to give to mankind a magnanimous, whoa, oh, new word to look up. All right, let's look this one up. Magnanimous. Cowboy had one. Let's see. Magnanimous. Showing or suggesting a lofty and courageous spirit. Yeah. Lofty and courageous spirit. To give mankind the lofty and courageous spirit, and to novel example of a people always guided by an exalted justice and benevolence. Who can doubt that, in which the course of time and things, the fruits of such a plan would richly repay any temporary advantages which might be lost by steady adherence to it? Which might be lost by steady adherence to it? There we go. Can it be that Providence has not connected by the permanent felicity of a nation with its virtue? The experiment, at least, is recommended by every sentiment which enables human nature. Alas! Is it rendered impossible by its vices? I always got to do the question form. Anyways, so that one is really interesting. I'm gonna leave that one there, because that one just I want everybody in the chat, or everybody, if anybody's watching this video, I hope somebody watches this video. I mean, I don't mind if nobody watches the video. I don't really care. I'm doing this for me. You know, if you want to watch it, that's cool. If you want to watch the whole thing, if you're this far into this from the beginning, thank you. I appreciate your efforts. But I'll leave that last paragraph to you. You tell me what you think of that in the comments. I want to hear what you think. As a viewer, I want to. That one's you. That one's all you. So, let us continue. Actually, let me get quick water. Okay. In the execution of such a plan, nothing is more essential than permanent inveterate antipathies against particular nations, and passionate attachments for others should be excluded, and that, in place of them, just and amicable feelings towards all should be cultivated. The nation which indulges towards another a habitual hatred or habitual fondness is in some degree a slave. It is a slave to its animosity or its affections, either of which is sufficient to lead it astray from its duty and its interests. Antipathy in one nation against another disposes each other more readily to offer insult and injury, to lay hold of slight causes of umbrage, and to be hotly and intractable with accidental or trifling occasions of dispute occur. Hence, resentment sometimes impels to war the government, contrary to the best calculations of policy. The government sometimes participates in the national propensity and adopts through passion what reason would reject. At other times, it makes the animosity of the nation subservient to projects of hostility instigated by pride, ambition, and other sinister and pernicious, I don't know that word, pernicious motives. So let's look this one up. Pernicious. Oh, deadly and wicked motives. Sinister and wicked motives. Yeah, we'll use wicked. The peace often, sometimes perhaps the liberty of nations, has been the victim. Well, this one is interesting. Definitely talks about how we need to be united as Americans, because the entire point of the enemy, the tactic the enemy needs to use is to divide us by political party, by region, by ethnicity, by whatever. They need to divide us so that way they can screw us over and pass bad laws, destroy our country, take away everything, so that way they can have it and we have nothing. We become a slave to them. And yeah, it is ironic that George Washington was a slave owner talking about being a slave, but I think he would probably know more than anybody, wouldn't he? At the end of the day, somebody wants to make you their female dog. And I'm nobody's female dog. I'm my own female dog. Trying to keep it PG for y'all in the chat, comment section, whatever you want to call it, on the YouTubes here. So let's continue. Okay, 3/4 of the way there. A little bit more. Just stay with me, folks. Just stay with me a little bit longer here. So likewise, a passionate attachment of one nation for another produces a variety of evils. Sympathy for the favorite nation, facilitating the illusion of an imaginary common interest in cases where no real common interest exists, the infusing of into one of the amenities of the anemones of the other, that one, that betrays the former in a participation in the quarrels and wars of the latter without adequate inducement or justification. It leads also to concessions to the favorite nation, of privileges denied to others, which is apt doubly to injure the nation making the concessions, by unnecessarily parting with what ought to have been retained, and by exciting jealousy, ill will, and a disposition to retaliate in the parties from whom equal privileges are withheld. And it gives to ambitious, corrupted, or deluded citizens who devote themselves to the favored nation facility to betray or sacrifice the interest of their own country without odium, sometimes even with popularity, gilding with the appearance of the virtuous sense of obligation, a commendable deference for public opinion, or laudable zeal for public good, the base or foolish compliances of ambition, corruption, or infatuation. Now we're really getting into the other part of how George Washington's warning, the foreign influence of other nations onto ours to create the fear of permanent foreign alliances and whatnot. The fear of allowing foreign influence into our country, which would destroy us from within, because the goal is to make us the willful fool of another nation's bidding. Again, I go back to the example in the Middle Eastern part of the world where we constantly side with one nation over another, allow them to conduct war crimes time after time again, and what did he say? Infusing into one the amenities of the other. So we literally take the side of one side over the other and help assist them in the wars and quarrels that they conduct with their enemies in that region. How is that not what's been going on since 1967? Once again, we had warnings from George Washington. We chose not to heed them. And that is why America is weak and needs to become strong again. We need to listen to George Washington, including, well, you, the viewer. But that's up to you now, isn't it? Now, let's continue on, because my throat is getting pretty dry and sore. As avenues to foreign influence in innumerable ways, such attachments are particularly alarming to the truly enlightened and independent patriot. How many opportunities do they afford to tamper with domestic factions, to practice the arts of seduction, to mislead popular opinion, to influence or awe the public councils? Such an attachment of a small or weak towards a great and powerful nation dooms the former to be a satellite of the latter. More discussion about how foreign influence can destroy our country and turn us from a position of strength to a position of weakness. But let us continue. Against the insidious wiles of foreign influence, I conjure you to believe me, fellow citizens. The jealousy of a free people ought to be constantly awake, not woke, awake. Since history and experience prove that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of Republican government. But that jealousy, to be useful, must be impartial, else it becomes an instrument of the very influence to be avoided, instead of a defense against it. Excessive partiality of one foreign nation and excessive dislike of another cause, for whom they actuate to see danger only from one side, and serve to veil and even second the arts of influence on the other. Real patriots who may resist the intrigues of the favorite are liable to become suspected and odious while its tools and dupes usurp the applause and confidence of the people to surrender their interests. Now, originally, at the time, this was written about how people were. France was trying to influence us to become their permanent ally at the time. But George Washington was really trying to get us to be neutral between them and Great Britain because they were at war with each other. Basically, France was trying to get us to take a side. And in foreign relations, taking a side is a very bad idea. Unless you really absolutely believe that it is the right thing to do and everybody agrees with it beforehand, it is usually a bad idea to take a side because that surrenders your ability to be neutral to the situation. But again, let us continue. The great role of conduct for us in regards to foreign nations is in extending our commercial relations to have with them as much little political connection as possible. So far as we have already formed engagements, let them be fulfilled with perfect good faith. Here, let us stop. Europe has a set of primary interests which to us have none or a very remote relation. Hence, she must be engaged in frequent controversies, the causes of which are essentially foreign to our concerns. Hence, therefore, it must be unwise in us to implicate ourselves by artificial ties in the ordinary, there it is again, vicissitudes. What did we say that was? Oh no. Okay, let me go back. Let me see if I can go backwards. Vicissitudes. The ordinary difficulty of her politics. So, European politics, difficult. Just look at the EU. That thing's a mess. Or the ordinary combinations and collisions of her friendships or amenities. Well, once again, like I said, he was discussing the issues between him and the European nations and trying to stay neutral, because that is usually the best course of action for our people, is to remain as neutral as possible when it comes to other nations' actions against one another. Especially within the day and age of the United Nations. The United Nations peacekeepers should be a more influential force when it comes to international strife and war and conflict. And the fact that it's a minimal influence is, I feel, is a disservice to the world overall. Because then the U.S. has to step in and send in their own military instead of the peacekeepers. Like, the peacekeepers being in the Middle East would be a lot better than trying to stop ISIS than the U.S. Because the UN would be the united front that the U.S. made, where we had all those assistant nations. We wouldn't need to create all that if we had the peacekeepers, and we wouldn't be there trying to influence the nation of Iraq or wherever we were, or Syria, because we need to go there for the oil, obviously. Anyways, I will continue on since I feel like I may have gone off on another tangent. Why forego the advantages of so peculiar a situation? Why quit our own to stand upon foreign ground? Why, by interweaving our destiny with that of any part of Europe, entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice? You know what? I mean, I've heard about the Chevrolet Caprice. I just thought it was a car. I thought it was a cool name for a car. I didn't know there was a real word for it. Well, let's look up this word for it. Okay, a sudden, impulsive, or exceedingly unmotivated. Okay, so caprice is like a knee-jerk reaction. Yeah, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay. It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign war. So far, I mean, as we are now at liberty to do it. For let me not be understood as capable of patronizing infidelity to existing engagements. I hold a maxim no less applicable to public than to private affairs, that honesty is always the best policy. That is true, is it not? He could not tell a lie. Anyways, I repeat it. Therefore, let those engagements be observed in their genuine sense. But, in my opinion, it is unnecessary and would be unwise to extend it. That makes sense. So he's just trying to put a nice bow on this by saying that he feels that there is nothing that benefits from being in a permanent alliance with anybody, be it France, Israel, Australia, you name the country. Having a permanent alliance with them is not that good. Hence why we have a massive surveillance system with four other nations creating the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes is proof that permanent foreign alliances take away liberty and your ability to be free from observation, subjugation, and whatever the government wishes to do to you to take away your rights, your freedom of expression. So let us continue. Taking care always to keep ourselves by suitable establishments on a respectable defensive posture, we may safely trust to temporary alliances for extraordinary emergencies such as World War II or other wars. And again, the UN wasn't created back then, but I really feel like the United Nations is a great avenue for us to not have permanent foreign alliances because we have a worldwide council that is permanent anyways. And should be a lot more, what is the word I'm looking for? Not respected, but cared for, I guess. To be made into a very proper international means of diplomacy. Because it's not. I mean, the Security Council has been nullified by our foreign alliance with Israel. I'm just going to call it out as it is. Foreign alliances ruin countries' abilities to direct themselves. Because we do whatever Israel tells us. Because there's a lot of dual citizens in Congress, whether we like it or not. A lot of people that like Israel a lot more than they like America, that work in American government. Which is why Israel gets to tell us what to do. Whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu or another person, we will always do their bidding. Because that is the point of foreign permanent alliances, is to influence our country to the betterment of theirs. And that's why I don't believe in allying with anybody outside of on a temporary basis. I mean, yeah, we'll have friends in the world. We'll have people that we associate with. Like the UK, we were enemies. That's partially the reasoning behind this. He was trying to avoid war with Britain, which inevitably we had. But us trying to stymie off war is more beneficial for us as a nation because we are not left weaker by constantly being at war like we are now. Another reason why we're a weak nation, because the military-industrial complex runs us and wants war all the time. All the time. We're constantly at war. Peace has but been a distant memory to me. The last time I knew peace was September 10th, 2001. And that is a problem. That is a big problem. So let us continue. Now that I went off on another dang tangent. Harmony liberal intercourse with all nations are recommended by policy, humanity, and interest. But even our commercial policy should hold an equal and impartial hand, neither seeking nor granting exclusive favors or preferences, consulting the natural course of things, diffusing and diversifying by gentle means the streams for commerce, but forcing nothing. I don't force anybody to do anything. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. If you want to roll with me, roll with me. If you want to roll with somebody else, there's the door. But let me continue before I lose. Oh, I lost my spot. Okay. No, there it is. There it is. Streams of commerce, but forcing nothing, establishing with power so disposed in order to give trade a stable course, to define the rights of our merchants, to establish the government to support them, for example. The conventional rules of intercourse. Keep your mind out of the gutter. I mean it. The best that present circumstances and mutual opinion will permit, but temporary and liable to be from time to time abandoned or varied, as experience and circumstances shall dictate, constantly keeping in view that is folly in one nation to look disinterested favors from another, that it must pay with a portion of its independence for whatever it may under that character, that by such acceptance it may place itself in the condition of having given equivalence for nominal favors, and yet of being reproached with ingratitude for not giving more. There can be no greater error than to expect or calculate upon real favors from nation to nation. It is an illusion which experience must cure with a just pride and ought to discard. Allow me to take a sip before I explain. So this is pretty in-depth about how we need. I think he's trying to explain the actions that this nation should take and keep in order to make sure that prosperity for us as a whole is brought upon us. It's very in-depth, and again, I'm gonna throw this one up to the chat here. Or I keep calling you chat. It's like on my Twitch or something. Whatever. On YouTube here. Comment down below. Let me know what's going on. Let me know what you think about what George Washington thinks we should do as a country to make it better. Alright, let us continue. We are almost there. This is the home stretch. I do believe so. So, yeah, it's definitely the home stretch here. I am offering to you, my countrymen, these counsels of an old and affectionate friend. I dare not hope they will make the strong and lasting impression I could wish. That they will control the usual currents of the passions, or prevent our nation from running the course which has hitherto marked the destiny of nations. But if I may even flatter myself that they may be productive of some partial benefit, some occasional good, that they may now be and then to recure, to moderate the fury of the party spirit, to warn against the mischiefs of foreign intrigue, to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism. Pretend patriots. I'm going to have to use that one. This hope will be a full recompense. Yeah, like recompensating somebody for the solicitude of your welfare by which they have been dictated. How far in the discharge of my official duties I have been guided by the principles which have been delineated. The public records, I don't even know what delineated means. Here we go. Let's see if there's a last word, y'all. Delineated. I I didn't spell it right. Let me click on the right wording. Okay, having or forming clear and principles which have been marked with drawn or painted lines. So we have marked our principles. Okay, cool. That's actually a pretty good one. The public records and other evidences of my conduct must witness to you and to the world. To myself, the assurance of my own conscience is that I have at least believed myself to be guided by them. In relation to the still subsiding war in Europe, my proclamation of the 22nd of April, 1793, is the index of my plan, sanctioned by your approving voice and by that of your representatives in both houses of Congress. The spirit of that measure has continually governed me, uninfluenced by any attempts to defer or divert it from me. Okay, here we go. This is it. I'm just going to run right through this, y'all. Let's go. After deliberate examination, with the aid of the best lights I could obtain, I was well satisfied that our country, under all the circumstances of the case, had a right to take, and was bound in duty and in interest to take, a neutral position. Having taken it, I determined, as far as I should depend upon me, to maintain it with moderation, perseverance, and firmness. The considerations which respect the right to hold this conduct, it is not necessary on this occasion to detail. I will only observe that, according to my understanding of the matter, that right, so far from being denied by any of the belligerent powers, have been virtually admitted by all. The duty of holding a neutral conduct may be inferred, without anything more, from the obligation which justice and humanity impose on every nation, in cases in which it is free to act, to maintain and violate. Oh no, we got another word. I don't know. Inviolate. Inviolate? Okay, I guess that would be to not violate. To maintain and violate the relations of peace and amity towards other nations. Yeah, so not violating the relations. There we go. Inviolate. There you go. The inducements of interest for observing that conduct will best be referred to your own reflections and experience. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. With me, a predominant motive has been to endeavor to gain time to our country to settle and mature its yet recent institutions, and to progress without interruption to that degree of strength and consistency which is necessary to give, humanly speaking, the command of its own fortunes. Though, in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error. I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. Whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to avert or mitigate the evils to which they may tend. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view upon them with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself soon will be to the mansions of rest. Relying on its kindness in this as in other things, and actuated by that fervent love towards it, which is so natural to a man who views in the native soil of himself and his progenitors with several generations, I anticipate with pleasing exception in the retreat in which I promised myself to realize, without alloy, the sweet enjoyment of partaking, in the midst of my fellow citizens, the benign influence of good laws, under a free government, the ever favorite object of my heart, and the happy reward, as I trust, for the mature mutual cares, labors, and dangers. The United States, the 19th of September, 1976. George Washington. Cheers to the people that watched the whole damn thing. It was just water, but whatever. So that's in the National Records and Archives. If you want to look it up, I got this page URL. I can't scroll down, but it's at ourdocuments.gov, and then it's document 15 because it's probably one of the first ones they ever put in there. Obviously, sure. Document number 1 is the Declaration and all that stuff, but yeah, that. I actually, you might think I didn't enjoy that, but I actually have fun doing this. I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoy this speech. It is a very, 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 very long speech, but every single word is with intent, is with care, and was thought of. That is the beauty of this speech, is that even though it's 45 minutes long and I'm sweating like a stuffed pig right now after doing it, I really enjoyed that, and I hope you all did too. So, this is Big Baby Zubas. I'm going to sign off now. I'm probably going to go take a shower or something, because oh my gosh, I'm nasty. Ugh. Anyways, probably because it's, July 4th, and it's hot, and I got the AC off. Because of whatever stupid things they got going on. Don't worry about it. But I do appreciate y'all. Sorry I'm all the way back here, but kind of like this whole, the way I got my setup here. I don't like to get up close and personal, even though I could. Just let me know in the comments below, right down there. Let me know in the comments, y'all. And alright, I do appreciate y'all coming by and watching this really, really long thing. Been doing this for what, almost I'm at 1 hour and 47 minutes, so yeah, it took me an hour. It took me at least an hour and a half to read what should have been a 45-minute speech, but that's what I get for putting it in context, right? It is what it is. So, I do appreciate y'all coming in here and watching this whole dang thing. I really, really do. And I'm sure President Washington definitely does too. Please consider his thoughts. Please consider the fact that he was right about everything. Alright, y'all be safe. Peace.